Remember
No,
last week's story where Sean's like, this guy in a wheelchair needed help getting into a van. I'm like, why are you taking all the good parking spaces? I'm here to pick up my damn relatives who said they want to come here at 5. And then he backed over the guy. I think we have video of that on our YouTube channel if you want to subscribe and like and share and hit the button for alerts so you always know. Something like that.
Is life okay, Sean? Are you all right?
Yeah, no. No. Look, I don't want to hijack the show again. Let's go back to your column.
Since when?
Yeah,
No, we don't want to make it interesting. Let's go back to your column.
he's just relieved that
column was interesting. I got your back, Melrick.
He's just relieved that those no good freeloading relatives that he invited are finally out of here. It's like, thank God. All they did was come here and eat my gourmet breakfast and trample on the tulips and all that other good shit in his English garden back there.
Holland, excuse me.
Oh, okay. But no, well, so speaking of Drew, Drew refers to this guy as America's guest because he always keeps popping up, and I think that's a fair statement. But Brian Banks is back. You've heard me report on him at Fox 2 and at the Free Press since 2012 when he first ran for state rep. At that time, I think he only had 8 felonies, and I think he may still only have 8 felonies because the last time he was facing multiple felony charges, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor to avoid going to prison because he defrauded a credit union and all this other stuff. He is...
Was he convicted of 8 felonies?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the amazing thing is, so I had a friend of mine take a look at my column and say, what do you think? How can I tighten it? What can I do? He said, well, you need to tell people how much time he spent in prison for those 8 felonies.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
And the truth is...
Who is this friend?
Andrew Galarno. He's one of my buddies from New Hampshire, one of the best reporters and best writers I've ever worked with.
How long was the column before he started?
Company notwithstanding.
That's pretty long.
Well, I actually asked him, can you help me cut it? So that was...
That's what I mean. It must have been 30 pages.
So one of the best writers and reporters in the world is just like, still ended up being that long. But he's like, how much time did he do in prison?
Great question.
And the answer is no time, because this guy, throughout his career, has relied on his political connections and his friends to get a break, including when, you have...
It's a real wonder why he keeps committing felonies then, right? He doesn't pay a penalty.
Exactly. He keeps walking away from every car crash that he causes. He's like the wrong way driver on the highway where you hear the report like he struck a car, the driver of the other car and the passengers were instantly killed. The wrong way driver's in the hospital, expected to recover soon.
My mouth is agape because I'm blown away, and I must be naive to think that you can commit 8 felonies and never spend a day in prison.
Yeah, he just keeps cutting plea deals, and sometimes it's because he finds judges that are friendly to him, and so they let this happen. And other times he talks prosecutors into agreeing.
8? Maybe 1 felony? Wow. Okay.
So here's what folks may not know about Michigan law, but I think you can kind of divine it because it just makes sense, that when you're convicted of multiple felonies, you become what we call a habitual offender, which means once you've committed so many felonies, if you commit another felony, let's say that the maximum sentence is 5 years. Well, as a habitual offender, there's a multiplier, and so the 5 years may become 10 or 15 years because it's the law's way of saying you're not learning. Our laws are not hard enough for you, so we have to put an enhancement in there just so we can get it through your thick damn skull. And I would be tempted to say he doesn't learn, but he has learned. He's learned that he can game the system. When he runs for office, even with this terrible record, and we're not even getting into the civil side of it, where he's been sued for sexually harassing his aide, where he's been sued for not paying his rent, where he's been sued for not paying his bills.
How many civil judgments do you know off the top of your head?
I mean, it's got to be somewhere.
At least 3, 4, 5?
No. I mean, I think there's at least a dozen lawsuits filed against him for not paying for stuff that he promised he would pay for. But even after all this, he gets endorsed by people like Mayor Mike Duggan, Wayne County Executive Warren Evans, former Detroit Police Chief, and then Wayne County Sheriff Benny Napoleon. Although I can tell you, after I did one of my first stories on Brian Banks, an advisor to Benny Napoleon said, Benny never endorses anybody. Brian talked him into endorsing him, making an exception, and he did. Now he's like, he really regrets it. He wished he'd never endorsed this.
So he's just a smooth talker. Is that what it is?
Well, he's a smooth talker, and he's connected.
Networker, yeah.
He's connected, and so he helps people, and he expects them to help him. And he is very effective because he works hard, and nobody works harder than a liar, because when you lie, it's incredibly difficult to maintain that artifice. I have been in situations where maybe there was a little overlap between girlfriends or something like that, like maybe not too long or anything, but
what a humble brag that is.
No, just like things were pretty much on the outs,
okay.
But
they didn't know that, but you
didn't quite. I think everybody knew it, but you didn't quite get to that situation where, like, we have to have the conversation.
What do you mean you think?
Because I can't speak for other people.
Oh,
but,
I see. So they didn't know it all.
But no, so you're a young
way,
person and you're dating and you meet somebody else and you're like, this relationship feels like it's playing out. Then you meet somebody else like, well, I really like them. That must mean something's fading in the other relationship. And so it kind of, there's almost like a dovetailing there. But at any rate.
You're saying you have enough love for everyone, so it doesn't really ever fade.
Well, there are some exceptions, but we won't get that. But what happens is when you're trying to say, I don't really feel like going out tonight because of whatever. And
so
then,
you call up your other girl?
Maybe they call you. I don't know. Is that how this works?
Okay.
But what I'm saying is just trying to that little fulcrum point where you're transitioning from one thing to the next thing. Or let's say it's another job, like you're going to take another job and you're talking to the new employer, but you're still working for the old employer, and you're like, yeah, I really don't want to get into any long-term projects right now because I'm, and like, wow, what are you thinking about? Saying, and meanwhile, you're trying to figure out where you're going to sit in the new place. Keeping all that straight is exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's exhausting. And when Kwame, get the bell ready, when Kwame Kilpatrick's people asked me to be his first press secretary, and I was thinking about it, I couldn't get involved in any long-term planning with the Free Press because it wouldn't have been appropriate for me to help the Free Press plan something if I was going to work for the mayor, and I couldn't help the mayor on anything because it wouldn't be appropriate for me as an employee of the Free Press to help the mayor get ready for anything. I had to take a week off from work because just trying to sort all that out made my head feel like it was going to explode. All of which is to say that when you are telling somebody something and it's not the truth and you're trying to convince people, you work harder than anybody, and most of us don't have the energy of Brian Banks because this guy lies about so much. He must just be constantly cranking.
That was a lot of all, by the way, when you said all of which to say, and I think Mark and I now need a week off to sift through that.
Well, the whole point of it is, so you have this 8-time convicted felon who served no time.
Oh, yeah.
At least
Wait a second. I thought we were talking about his gals. I wanted to hear more about that.
I know, but I'm trying to get him back on track. You mind talking about his women? We'll be here all day.
So your life, so you got married, and that simplified things for you, because before you were with 8-10 gals at a time.
Yeah, marriage simplified.
I want to hear this.
So, anyways, Brian Banks is the principal at.
Wait a second. Was there a pre-show meeting that I missed? Because what are we talking about today anyway?
ML's column right now. Thanks for attending the pre-show meeting.
Yeah, I'd say anything that happened before 11:15, you'll just have to guess at because you were not a witness in it.
Anything else we're talking about?
Yeah,
today?
your column. We'll get to that.
Okay. Do you feel like it's your show, by the way, again now, Mike, after that last 15 minutes or so?
No, after the last 30 seconds, I feel like a barnacle on the SS Sean Windsor heading right towards an iceberg while everybody else says, nothing to worry about. While the band played Waltzing Matilda. No? Okay.
I thought was Matilda one of your gals?
No, that's from the.
Isn't that what they played?
I think so. That's.
Oh yeah.
No, I just thought maybe also you dated somebody named Matilda.
So McDowell Preparatory Academy is a 100-year-old school in Detroit. It's extremely challenged. Extremely challenged. When it comes to test scores, they have 7% of their students hit the state proficiency, hit the proficient in all subjects. The state average is 37%, which means they are not doing well at all.
Can I ask you about that? Do you have any idea what the city of Detroit's at? Instead of comparing it to the state?
That's a good question. I do not know.
Okay.
So that's the short answer. But I
mean, I would assume it's less than the state, but I would be blown away if it was as low as Academy.
So that's where this gets complicated, because when the state does these averages, they give you the school score, then they give you the state average, and then they try and compare you to comparable schools. Mm-hmm. Well, comparable schools to McDowell the proficiency rate is 48%.
Okay, there you go. Well, because it's a charter school.
But hold on a second. I talked to an expert at Chalkbeat, which covers education issues, and when we looked at comparable schools to McDowell, the schools were in Rochester Hills, Livonia, wherever. So like, there's no way that schools in Rochester Hills are comparable to McDowell. I think probably the poorest person in Rochester Hills could buy and sell me 10 times over. So I don't know how the state figures out what comparable schools are, but this is a school that has been struggling for a long time, deserves to have a tremendous experienced educator at the helm to try and straighten it out. Instead, a bunch of Brian Banks' political pals run the school. They fire their management company so that they can pick the superintendent of the school, and they pick Brian Banks, who's never been an administrator, who's never been a superintendent or a principal, but he needed a job because they hired him right after he lost his most recent political campaign. So he was looking for a gig. Now, he does have a master's degree in education from Wayne State, and he does have a PhD from an online college, which, by the way, U.S. News and World Report does not rank among their top 800, colleges that they, or graduate schools that they evaluate. But they figured this is the right guy for the
You
job.
need some water?
And I need some justice. And they don't
I mean, that's
bottle that.
all well and good, but 8 felonies, and he has to be licensed. You wrote this in his column. He has to get a license from the Department of Education. And they didn't have any issue with his felonies that he served no time for, or is the civil judgments, the money issues?
Well, they wouldn't answer questions when I asked them, when they said, what do you think a lot? He's learned. Like, well, do you know about this? Do you know about that? Do you know about this guy that you're worried about handling money at this school? Because when he got his license to be an administrator, there's a proviso that you can't have any financial crimes and you can't handle money.
I find it hard to believe that Brian Banks would be around money of any sort and not want to handle it.
Well, the reason why that's a particularly cogent point is when I was driving here, I drove by an old grocery store on the east side that's now closed, but where he took some campaign checks and he sent one of his assistants over there to cash them at the bodega, which is illegal. You can only cash those in your campaign account, but he wanted money. This guy has a history of mishandling money. And so when I tried to ask the Michigan Department of Education if they were aware of those things, and if they were aware of the fact that at the time they gave him his certificate, he had a judgment against him because he stiffed yet another creditor, that's when they stopped answering questions.
So do you think, because obviously the school, the management company of the school will do nothing about it. They like him. They hired him. They know what the real story is. They probably have a lot of connections. But do you have any inkling that maybe the Department of Education might have stopped answering your questions because they want to look into it a little bit more? And can they do anything?
My suspicion is that nobody wants to look into this anymore because they're afraid of what they're going to find and because they've already turned this guy loose. It's kind of like...
But is that something they could do? Could they rescind whatever the certificate is? Could they force him out?
That's a great question, and I don't know.
Because it's a charter school. The rules are a little different.
Well, the board is not going to force him out.
No, exactly, yeah.
They love him, and they're the ones who are supposed to watch over it. But Detroit Public Schools are supposed to watch over them because this is a charter school that's been chartered by the public schools, which is a whole weird thing right there that we don't have to get into because it's more convoluted than this other stuff, which is pretty convoluted. But when I asked them,
but it's fascinating.
4 years ago, you guys didn't want to do business with this guy. Now he's running a school that you're responsible for. They didn't want to answer any of those questions. So people just want to allow Brian Banks to get in a position where he can cause more mischief, and they don't want to watch him, and they don't want to talk about it. And the column, as I see it, there's 2 points.
He wins again.
Yeah.
Does he have something over him? Anybody?
Does he? Oh, what, over the people that hired him?
Yeah, I mean, what?
No, I think they just know him and they're friends with him. I mean, you heard ML say all the people that gave him endorsements.
Just like his charisma.
No, I think he gets things done for them. I think he's useful to them. So when you may remember in 2012, Wayne County Executive Warren Evans put together a group to try and limit the number of candidates for the congressional district in Detroit to one black candidate, hoping that he could beat Shri Tanadar, who ended up winning because he's only brown, so not good enough. So what happened is they had people who volunteered on that committee and who did the things like call candidates and say, hey, you got to come in for a meeting. We want to do this. Brian Banks was one of the people who worked on that committee. So he makes himself useful. He is someone who has always worked in politics. At some point, he went from being behind the scenes to being a candidate. And then he called in all his markers, and he was a successful candidate, never lost an election until he was forced to resign in disgrace. That's...
And then he didn't file his campaign finance laws or rules, or what is it, the forms?
Yeah, so people are...
So no one knows where that money went.
He's telling people, I've changed, I've gotten better, all this other crap. And one of the things that he's not good at is handling money. And everybody says, no, he's reformed. But he's still not disclosing where he gets his campaign money, what he's doing with it. He's not paying fines that he has for failing to do that. These are the signs that he has not changed. These are the signs that this problem may happen again. And this isn't about let's try and crush Brian Banks. Brian Banks can do whatever Brian Banks wants to do. This is about a school that's struggling.
That's what I was going to say. My first thought is, okay, well, you know what? He'll end up failing, and they're going to have egg on their face, and this whole school will just blow up, and it'll be failure. But meanwhile, you have 350 kids that go there.
Yeah. You have hundreds of families who are counting on this school.
I feel like education
to help their kids.
Education is becoming like a new center point for scams in general. I don't know. Have you guys seen or
There's
heard?
a lot of money there. A lot of money.
Have you seen BS High about the football team that was created without the school at Bishop Sycamore?
I heard you guys talking about it on the aforementioned Drew and Mike podcast the other day.
The guy that was interviewed in that reminds me a lot of a Brian Banks type where, yeah, you write a lot of checks. You don't have to pay them. You don't ever have to pay anybody. And he started a school that doesn't exist. And you're basically using these kids as a commodity for yourself to raise money, to make a living, to raise your stature. It's really sickening. And no one cares because seems to be very little rules overseeing any schools or athletic departments within a school.
Yeah. The problem is it's our tax money. It's your tax money, which is why everybody who doesn't have a kid going to this school in Detroit should care. By the way, the other thing is everybody's like, well, people don't care about our kids and, don't tell us how to educate our kids. Brian Banks lives in Grosse Pointe, and some of the school board members, I don't know where all the school board members live, but the school board chairwoman lives in West Bloomfield. And one of the other school board members who voted for him and who had donated to his campaigns lives in Lincoln Park. So this whole notion of we got to watch out for our kids.
In Chicago?
No.
Lincoln Park here. It's right here.
Linkin Park. Yeah, there you go. This is just outside Detroit, Sean. I don't know if it's a suburb of Detroit, just like Fort Worth is a suburb of Dallas. I don't know if you knew that. But I was thinking of that yesterday. Last week we were talking about the 4 major metro centers in Texas. Like, does that include Dallas Fort Worth? Because that may be 2. I'm not really sure.
That's 1.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought. But I've been told otherwise.
No, it's 1.
I would love to hear. They would never go on the record, but wouldn't you love to hear from a teacher at this academy what they think about?
Oh, see, now that's the other thing. Is I suspect we're going to start hearing from people saying, hey, guess what's happening at the school now?
Yeah.
Or we're going to be hearing from people who say, nobody told me that my kid's principal was a crook. Because that's the other thing. When school board members defend a hiring like this, they say, he has had life experiences that make him a suitable candidate. Well, okay, if that's true, why don't you say anything about that on the website? If that's one of his selling points, then sell it, advertise it, make that a beacon that people can be drawn to. And then he says, and a lot of our families have a similar background. Well, wait, record scratch. You're saying that a lot of the families who send their kids to your school are 8-time felons. And let's say they are 8-time felons,
connections.
Which I think is a huge exaggeration. And as a parent at that school, I'd be offended that you're like, oh, so I'm an 8-time felon? Okay, great. That's who you think I am. But none of them have the connections, as you so sagely pointed out, that would allow you to be an 8-time felon and not do any prison time. This guy, in fact, while he did have, I think, a very challenged upbringing, which may be similar to some of the upbringings that these kids are facing, has used his ingenuity and his energy to rip off everybody he can possibly
It's just a matter of time.
And if you were telling me, I know your child is coming from a difficult background, and so you and he are probably dirtbags like Brian Banks, that would offend the hell out of me. But if you think that's why I want to send my kid to this school, don't just tell a reporter who catches this shenanigan that he's like everybody else. That should be something where you say, we're going to call this the Second Chance Academy. We're going to say, we have a principal that knows what it's like to grow up in challenges, that knows what it's like to have made mistakes and to be involved with the criminal justice system. And he's going to use that experience to help you turn your life around. But they don't say that.
Transparency, right?
They never say that until they're caught. In the same way that people say, oh, well, don't worry about my bankruptcies, because a lot of people here are bankrupt. Yeah, well, if that's one of your selling points and one of your strengths, don't only mention that when you're caught. Say that up front. So that's the latest column in the Free Press. I suspect there will be more to come, because I think we're going to hear from people who are like, hey, so what? What's this all about?
Well, I hope they get up in arms. I hope the parents get a little pissed off. I hope some of the employees get a little pissed off about it.
Well, we'll find out, but I'm also digging deeper to see what's in that file when he had his hearing, when the review went over his record, and to see if people at the Department of Education had some concerns, if there were some red flags that were raised that got swept aside.
They said he didn't. They said he did not misrepresent himself, but as you point out in the article, do they really know the whole story? Is it lying by omission? Did he keep some stuff out?
So. There's, as Catholics, we know about sins of omission, right? So if you don't ask me,
really good at them.
If you don't ask me a question,
keep digging.
Then I can't misrepresent myself, right? Because you haven't asked me the question that I would have to lie about.
No, I have a question for you. Does anybody have a pillow around here?
Oh, come on.
No, not because
important shit.
Not
man.
because of the content. Just haven't slept.
Yeah, right. I haven't either. School's back in session.
Sean's still tired from waiting for those flights to arrive.
Still on vacation. Still on a 2 month or 2 week vacation.
No, the end of the vacation, it didn't have power for several days, and you know how.
Oh, you want to talk about that?
No, I don't. I just, you know how that goes. So I'm a little sleepy. Sorry.
Sean, did you read our piece about Mary Sheffield declaring for mayor of Detroit?
I don't know what you're talking about. Dan
Alfana and I broke some news yesterday that Mary Sheffield, the city council president, who once twerked in my wife's face, is, that's an interesting story.
Well, so wait, who broke it? You or Dana?
Let's just say the team broke it.
That's nice.
At the Free Press, we all work together.
Do you?
For the public.
That's nice.
So.
Even though you told me, was it before we started recording or after? How do you say the vowels if you're somebody like you?
I said A-E-I-O-U, some sugar. That's how you remember.
But as a big fancy columnist like yourself, what's the most important vowel?
Well, I appreciate you thinking of me as a big fancy columnist. But what I said was, and I want to get this right because big fancy columnists try and get things right. I said, the great columnists think that their list of vowels is only one, and it's I. I didn't say that. I thought the great columnist. Now, if you
include yourself in that.
If
you
placed me in that category, I'm flattered.
No, I thought you were including yourself. No, I admire your confidence. I could probably use some of it, to be honest. I admire that.
Sean, there's only one vowel in my alphabet, and that's you. Because all I care about is people.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
Did I mention Mary Sheffield's?
Wait a second. We had some feedback that people didn't want the Geek of the Week. Didn't we get some feedback?
All right, fine. Sean's running things now.
What?
I thought we had some feedback. People saying they didn't want the Geek of the Week.
One person.
Yeah, what did they want? Warm puppy photo of the week?
And he's the Geek of the Week now.
Well, I saw on our viewer list earlier there was one person, so maybe it's that person.
Well, did you see that Frank checks in and says, I think Sean needs to update his Facebook pic? If I'm not mistaken, he has a full head of hair in that image.
On your Free Press picture.
Who said that?
Francis J. Kucinich.
Francis, I don't have hair in that photo. Maybe it's the...
You got a little more hair. I'm looking at it right now.
And I think I just mangled Frank's last name. I apologize.
Sorry. I only apologize on his behalf. Sorry, Frank.
Francis.
Sorry, Francis. By the way, where'd my screen go? I can't see anything.
Good.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Oh, because
you want to derail us even more?
No. I
think Sean doesn't need hair. I think Sean's a handsome man, and I think with less hair we have more face, and I think that's good.
No, I got about 6 chins. I noticed the profanity filter was off.
What do you mean? Where?
There was a whole list of things. Profanity filter was off. It's all blank now. I guess it doesn't matter.
Hey, what does Clemmy say? Can we scroll up and see? We have another comment from YouTube. Mark says, "How much does the school pay Banks?" Good question.
Great question.
We're trying to find that out, Mark. We have a lot more questions. I'm also wondering if he's being paid more than the last superintendent and principal at the school. And Frank, checking in from Canada, says he likes the shirt.
Oh, your shirt?
I don't know.
Or Sean's
I'm not
shirt?
sure which shirt.
My shirt is nothing.
My shirt.
Could be Sean's.
But
ML has a very. Your shirt. I laughed out loud when I
Okay,
saw it. 'cause
I'm gonna
I think
stand up and watch.
I think it's a really cool shirt, and I'll describe it.
Stand
for
up like Charlie.
Those listening. He went and saw the Beach Boys, so it's a Beach Boys shirt. It's got the retro picture of the guys in the circle, and
is that a new band?
two palm trees, and says the Beach Boys. The only problem is, it's set about 5 inches too low because the words in the picture start, right below your rib cage. It's like right on your stomach. It's the weirdest thing.
That way you
Looks
can
like
see.
a maternity shirt.
So it's not covering up. It's not covering up your nipples.
But there's nothing in that chest part. It's all just black. It looks ridiculous. It's got to be a
I'm glad you
misprint.
saw a newer band though. That's great. I think that's cool that you're.
Well, you don't like the
listening
Beach
to
Boys?
Some new music.
You don't like the Beach Boys?
I'm sure there are several people in that band who are younger than us. They just weren't the Beach
What about
Boys.
the Beach Boys?
I like Brian Wilson. Yeah.
I didn't know you were an ageist, Sean. I'm very
No, I
Sorry
just,
to hear
I
that.
just think it's cool that
they're
you're.
timeless, Sean.
They are. You're right. But I just think it's cool that you're finally, listening and watching and being part of stuff that's being created now by young people. It's great.
we work for a newspaper. The Beach Boy demographic is exactly who's paying our salary.
I know.
I mean-
but I just want you to, expand out there. Listen to Mark, because Mark is how I keep up a little bit
listen.
too.
So we're
Mark-
skipping Geek of
Well,
the Week now?
I like-
Mark's always got suggestions.
I like newer bands. I like the Beatles. They're newer than the Beach Boys. I think that Presley kid. He's got a lot of talent in him. He was a hero to most, but he never meant shit to me.
Hey, wow. That was a PE reference. Well done.
Yeah. And
Catch that?
No.
That was a song from 1989.
And you guys were talking about, Drew and Mike was talking about
the funky drummer?
Living Color. Remember Elvis? Elvis was electrifying. Elvis was.
boy.
Elvis is dead. You know Elvis is dead by In Living Color?
You should. I don't know that song. The band, not the TV show.
No, but
I thought-
Living Color has a song called Elvis
At
is
first I thought it
Dead,
was talking about
which
the
is
TV show.
fantastic. It's a great song. Not new wave, but still very good. So our Geek of the Week is public officials who don't answer questions.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
My friends, the summer of Britpop continues, although like the summer, it is winding down, and we are building up to the ultimate Britpop act, which we will play before we get back to our new wave theme, which, if you recall, we're challenging you to send us your favorite movie theme song that is also a new wave song. But Britpop
Just like Kevin.
is fascinating because it's kind of a upbeat, very, very English genre where it's kind of sing-songy and, life is blah, blah, blah. And it became really big in Britain at the same time. The antithesis of pop was becoming big on this side of the shore,
Grunge.
which is grunge. Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking about this on the way over here. A lot of thoughts on the way over here. Have you ever seen plaid on a British person above their waist? I mean,
God, no. Not
kilts
really.
and stuff like that, sure, no problem. But have you ever seen a British person with a flannel shirt on?
Not that I can think of. Well, wasn't that traditionally a Northwestern United States thing?
I think so.
I wore
Or-
those in the 70s in
or
the Midwest.
Canada.
Before that, yeah, Canada, I guess.
But I mean,
Outdoorsy, woodsman, lumberjack type thing.
yeah, plaid is like the flag of grunge, but you don't even see flannel in
Flannel
England.
was all over the 70s in middle school in the Midwest. What are you talking about?
Right, no, but I'm saying in
Before
England,
that.
you think of plaid as being a very British thing, but you don't see
in a
anybody
suit.
wearing plaid shirts, or well, I guess you maybe like a plaid dress shirt or something, but you don't see flannel shirts over there. So Anyway, while we were going crazy for flannel, they were going crazy for Britpop. And Room 7609 is brought to you by the people who bring you great music every week. That is the Caju Cafe. This weekend, clear your calendars. It is the Muscle Beach Music Festival. It starts on Thursday. That's August 31st at the Caju Cafe. First up, Ambrosia Blue, Werewolves, and then Blackwater Sniper from Chicago. Permanently Pissed is there, and Knuckle Dragger. Permanently Pissed, which is also
great name.
What happens to people at the Garage Bar. Best place in town to hang out for the summer. Friday Muscle Beach Music Festival continues. It goes into Saturday and Sunday and Monday, which is also Muscle Madness, all you can eat mussels at the Caju Cafe. They're going to take a break next Tuesday, but they're going to be going all Labor Day weekend with the Muscle Beach Music Festival. Too many bands to tell you about. That's how packed their calendar is. So go to cajucafe.com. They're open late every night. The kitchen is open later than almost anybody on the east side. Full menu available till midnight. Sunday they close a little earlier, the kitchen at 10 o'clock. But find out more about the Caju by going to cajucafe.com. And our Britpop entry this week is Pulp with a great video. In fact, it's considered one of the greatest videos of all time. It's called This